It was found in an old garage, a small motorized machine about the size of a shoebox, built from heavy cast iron and weighing somewhere around 25 pounds. When plugged in and switched on, the horizontal arm moves back and forth with a short, sharp 1/8-inch motion as if it was meant to push, shave, stamp, or cut something with precision. The platen can tilt a full rotation and raises or lowers on a threaded post, like it was designed for fine adjustment. Whatever used to attach to the end of the moving arm is gone, leaving only a blunt end that hints at a missing blade or tool head. Any idea what it was used for? This is a master method piston expander, a tool auto mechanics relied on back in the mid-20th century to give worn engine pistons a second life. When an engine ran for years, the piston skirt could wear down and become loose inside the cylinder, leading to knocking sounds, reduced compression, and poor performance. Instead of replacing the piston, mechanics would use this machine to reshape it. The expander worked by rapidly striking the inside of the piston skirt with a hammering arm, stretching the metal outward just enough to restore a proper fit. It was a surprisingly precise process, despite looking rough by today's standards, and it saved countless engines. Tools like this were especially valuable during wartime, when parts were rationed and new pistons were expensive or simply unavailable. Repair shops used methods like piston expansion to keep trucks, tractors, and civilian cars running when replacements couldn't be found. It was found on a farm in southwest New Jersey, a 5-pound cast-iron cutting device with a wood V-groove loader and a handle that looks like it once had a wooden dowel attached. The metal shows age, use, and rust, but nothing stamped on it to give clues. The owner says it has been on the property for at least 25 years and no one has ever been able to identify it. Antique dealers, online searches, and local collectors offered guesses, but none have matched the shape, weight, or function. The farm is and always has been a horse property, so it may have been connected to tack, fencing, feed, or farm repairs. What could this thing be? This is a vintage bread slicer, the kind you'd find in old bakeries or general stores before factory-sliced loaves became the norm. You'd place the loaf against the guide, then use the hinged arm or sliding blade to cut even slices, one after another. Some versions were mounted to a counter, while others were portable and used at home. Before commercial sliced bread became widespread in the 1930s, tools like this made it possible to get uniform slices for sandwiches, toast, or serving guests. It was simple, mechanical, and dependable, no electricity required. It was found in a Midwestern garage sitting among old tools and farm parts. The piece is a heavy cast-iron circle, roughly 15 inches across and weighing around 20 pounds. The outer edge has evenly spaced notches, like it once meshed with something or locked into place. There are no markings, no text, and nothing obvious to identify what it belonged to. It feels like a part of something larger rather than a standalone tool. Maybe old machinery, maybe agricultural equipment, maybe something industrial. Hard to tell just by looking. Any idea what it could be? This is part of a shaker grate from an old round coal stove. Back when coal heating was common, stoves needed a way to clear ash without putting out the fire. This ring would sit inside the stove and a second inner ring would rotate against it. That shaking motion let fine ash fall through into the ash pan while still holding the burning coal in place. If clinkers formed, those hardened chunks that wouldn't burn, the grinding action between the rings helped break them down so they could drop through. It's a clever bit of old heating technology, built tough, simple, and made to last through decades of winters. It was picked up at an estate sale in North Carolina. A cast iron piece about 7 inches tall and 9 inches wide. It weighs a little over 2 pounds. The frame is U-shaped and solid, and there's a threaded rod running through the middle. The rod spins freely, and one end has a small pulley. The other end tapers like it was meant to secure something. No markings, no maker name, no date. Just an old mechanism that looks like it once clamped, tightened or tensioned something. Maybe part of a workshop setup, farm tool, sewing or leather tool, or something from a machine that's missing the rest of its parts. What could it have been used for? This is a polishing arbor, the kind used in workshops for sharpening, buffing, and finishing metal, wood, jewelry, or tools. It works with two styles of buffing wheels. One type has a large center hole and is clamped tightly between two metal washers. The other uses a much smaller hole and mounts onto the tapered, threaded spindle. As the machine spins, the taper pulls the wheel inward until it locks firmly in place. When you need to switch wheels, you simply turn it backward a couple of turns and it releases instantly, making the process fast and convenient. It was picked up at a Goodwill, just sitting on a shelf with no tag explaining anything. A small cast iron bowl with a separate lid, both heavier than expected for the size. The lid has small holes arranged in a pattern almost like a lighthouse window layout, but there are no marks, stamps, or symbols anywhere on the metal. The base is just a simple bowl shape, no inner grate, tray, or hardware. Nothing inside suggests burning charcoal or incense, and there's no sign of wax or oil like a candle warmer. Any idea what this is? This is an old cast iron stovetop humidifier, the kind used before electric humidifiers existed. You would fill it with water and place it on top of a wood-burning stove, and as the stove heated the metal, the water slowly evaporated and added moisture back into the dry winter air. Homes heated by wood or coal stoves could get extremely dry, causing cracked skin, sore throats, static electricity, and even damage to wooden furniture, so a simple device like this made a big difference. Many of these came in decorative shapes, like kettles, pans, or enamel pots, and they often stayed on the stove all season long as part of the winter household routine. It was picked up for $10 in a thrift store, and nobody there could say what it was. A solid cast iron or steel piece, small enough to carry but unexpectedly heavy for its size. There are no maker's marks or lettering anywhere on it, just a simple raised star in the middle. No hinges, no moving parts, no obvious mounting points, and nothing on the underside that gives away a use. It feels old, but there's nothing that confirms a date or place. Any idea what it might have been for? This is a buggy step, once mounted onto the side or frame of a horse-drawn carriage or buggy. Before cars, climbing into a carriage could be awkward, especially with long skirts or heavy clothing, so these small cast iron steps made it much easier and more graceful. Riders would place a foot on the step, lift themselves up, and then climb into the seat, almost like an early version of a running board on vintage automobiles. It was found at a cottage on Block Island in Rhode Island, sitting off to the side like it had been forgotten for decades. A tall cast iron machine close to 3 feet high, with a solid frame and a hand crank. The lettering on the front looks like it once read automatic action or something similar, but corrosion has erased most of it. The mechanism inside still moves, though stiff, and the crank drives a set of internal gears that look like they were meant to power something external rather than act alone. Whoever made it didn't add markings beyond the faded text, which makes it harder to trace. Any idea what this machine was used for? This is a vintage Wizard concrete block-making machine, the kind that let people manufacture their own cement blocks on site back in the early 1900s. When you used it, you'd pour a stiff, semi-dry concrete mix into the mold, tamp it down, then close the press. Levers and pressure inside the machine compressed the mixture into a block. Once the concrete set enough to hold together, you'd open the mold and remove the block, ready to use for foundations, porches, or even entire house walls. Machines like this became popular because they offered a cheap, workable alternative to wood or quarried stone. As lumber prices rose and natural stone became expensive, concrete blocks, especially rock-face blocks with textured surfaces meant to mimic stone, rose in demand. In its day, this was a tool for builders, farmers, or even ambitious homeowners. With enough effort, pouring, tamping, curing, an ordinary man working with simple tools could produce a full set of building blocks and erect a house using nothing but his own labor. It was found in an antique store and stood out because of how strange it looked. A tall forged steel structure almost 4 feet high and much heavier than its size suggests. The metal wasn't cast but shaped and punched by hand with tenon joints instead of bolts, so it looks like something built to last, rather than something decorative. At the top, there's a hook loop, like it was meant to hang or suspend something. In the center, there's a spike pointing downward, and below that, a bowl-shaped piece supported by 3 sturdy legs. The whole shape feels intentional, but none of the usual clues are there. No markings, no maker stamp, nothing burned, scorched, or worn that would hint at heat or flame. Even the antique store owner couldn't place it. What could it have been used for? This is a theater prop, specifically the kind used to bring the witch's cauldron scene to life on stage. The forged steel frame, tripod legs, and dramatic silhouette weren't built for function, but for presence. No scorch marks, no wear from heat, no soot, because it never cooked anything except atmosphere. On stage, it would sit under dim lighting or fog, holding a fake bubbling pot while actors circled and chanted, "Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble." A tool not for work, but for story. It was found mixed in with old blacksmith and farm tools from the late 1800s, a round cast iron piece, roughly 15 pounds, with a deep center recess and a short round post rising from the middle. The number 5 is cast into the body. The screws look like they were meant to come apart at some point, but age and rust have locked everything in place. Nobody seems to know if it was meant to hold something, shape something, or crush something. Any ideas what this might have been used for? This is what blacksmiths call a duck's nest, a forged iron fitting designed to sit at the heart of an old coal or coke forge. The wide, conical opening is where the bellows, or later a crank-style blower, would attach. When air was pushed through that opening, it accelerated and pulled in even more air, creating a powerful, focused blast straight through the center hole and up into the fire pot. That airflow is what let raw coal turn into a roaring, white-hot core capable of softening iron, welding steel, or shaping farm tools, horseshoes, hinges, and blades. Without a properly built duck's nest, a forge just smolders. With one, it becomes a furnace. It was dug up in the mountains of Idaho where an old dump site once sat. A cast iron ring about 15.5 inches across, surprisingly heavy, and wrapped with 16 copper windings spaced evenly around its edge. There are no markings, no manufacturer name, no dates, nothing to give away its origin. The metal is worn from time underground, and the copper has darkened with age. Some thought it might be electrical, maybe part of old farm machinery, maybe a forgotten industrial component. Someone even came across a similar piece online described as a possible ignition coil, though that wasn't confirmed. Any idea what it could have been used for? This is a magneto from a Ford Model T. Instead of relying on a battery like modern cars, the Model T used a flywheel-mounted magneto to generate ignition power as the engine ran. Small permanent magnets were mounted on the flywheel, passing over a ring of coils to create alternating current every time the engine rotated. That current went directly to the ignition coils and spark plugs, keeping the engine firing even if the battery was dead or missing entirely. It was simple, reliable, and nearly impossible to kill, which fit perfectly with the Model T's reputation for being rugged, repairable, and stubbornly unstoppable. It was found in an old house, a heavy cast iron thing, solid enough that lifting it feels like a commitment. The top has a lid that latches shut, and inside there's a spiral cylinder with blades. When the lid is closed, there's only one round opening at the top. No obvious in and out, like a normal grinder. No markings to give away age or origin. People who saw it said, maybe it's a meat grinder, but something doesn't line up. Most grinders have a place where the food exits. This one doesn't. Whatever went into it stayed inside during use. Any idea what it could have been used for? This is an antique tobacco grinder. Back when smoking tobacco came in tightly rolled plugs or dense twists rather than ready to use loose leaves, this tool turned that chunk of tobacco into a finer, usable cut. You'd place the plug inside, turn the crank, and the internal teeth would shred it into a consistent texture suitable for pipes, hand-rolled cigarettes, or snuff. It wasn't just functional. It gave smokers control over cut size, moisture, and flavor, something prepackaged tobacco no longer offered. It was found in the basement of an old house that still had traces of early 1900s hardware and utilities. The object is heavy cast iron, solid enough that it feels like it was built for heat, pressure, or fuel rather than for decoration. On one side, there are threaded fittings, the kind you would normally see on gas lines or old plumbing. There are also small valves built into the body, and what looks like an igniter or spark point sitting near the opening. Nothing about it feels ornamental. Everything seems functional. What do you think it was built for? This is a burner tube unit for an old boiler or water heater. It sat inside the firebox, where gas or oil fuel would ignite and burn along the length of the tube, sending heat upward into a water tank or boiler chamber. The perforations helped spread the flame evenly, and the heavy metal construction ensured it could withstand years of high heat, soot, and constant cycling.